At dawn, David struck something buried beneath the old pecan tree. An old lockbox sealed in roots and silence. Inside, a child's journal, a photo, and a police badge tied to a long-forgotten missing girl. His dog had led him there, digging for days like he knew a secret no one else did. But what happened next will shock even those who thought they'd seen everything. But first, let's go back to the beginning. The first time Scout dug, David didn't think much of it. Puppies dig, just like they chew shoes or chase their tails. But by the third day, David noticed something was off. Scout didn't dig like a dog searching for fun. He dug like something was missing, like something needed to be found. And it wasn't random, always the same place, same angle, same depth. By the end of the week, the patch around the base of the pecan tree looked like a battlefield, its roots exposed like bones pulled from a shallow grave. What truly unsettled David wasn't the hole. It was the ritual. Every morning, before breakfast, Scout would sprint out the back door and head straight for the tree. Nose to the ground, he'd circle once, twice, and then paw to earth. He never hesitated, never looked around. Just straight to it, as if guided by something older than instinct, something buried deeper than memory. He didn't just dig with his paws either. Sometimes he'd press his snout hard against the dirt, snorting, sneezing, backing up with low growls like the ground had spoken to him in a language no human could understand. David tried distractions. A new chew toy, long walks, treats, even a trip to the lake. But Scout's fixation didn't waver. He'd wait until David wasn't watching, then sneak off like a thief returning to the scene of a crime. And when David would catch him, mud-covered and panting, eyes wide with purpose, he didn't wag his tail or beg forgiveness. He'd just stare up, chest heaving as if to say, "Don't you see it yet?" The tree itself had begun to change. Bark sloughed away near the base where Scout scratched. Ants abandoned the roots, the grass around it died in an uneven ring, a bruised halo on the earth. David told himself it was coincidence, or soil erosion, or maybe Scout had disturbed a nest. But some nights, on the rare nights when David left the porch light on, he swore he saw Scout sitting by the tree, not digging, just watching. Not the tree, not the yard. Watching something in the air. Something David couldn't see. That's when the dreams started. They were vague at first. Rusted hinges, a girl's laughter, the sound of paws on hardwood. Then came the whispers, and the image he couldn't shake. Scout, nose pressed to the dirt, tail still, ears raised, not like a dog searching for a toy, but like a sentinel listening at the gates of the dead. The wind had stilled around him, as if the morning itself held its breath. David knelt beside the open lockbox, the shovel discarded behind him like a relic of a former life. The earth beneath his knees was damp, cold, and clinging, but he didn't notice. All he could see were the three objects laid out before him, half-shadowed in the early dawn light, as though the soil had been guarding them, not hiding, but waiting. The badge came first. It was heavy, unnaturally so for its size. The metal was dulled with age, but not corrosion. And though the engraved lettering had faded, the outline of a 5-point star and the etched word deputy remained just legible. A police badge. David turned it over, feeling a strange chill at the touch, as if it retained the memory of every lie told in its name. Next, the photograph. It was creased in 4 places, folded and unfolded so many times that it had become more scars than image. Still, the figures were unmistakable. A girl, maybe 11 or 12, with sunburnt cheeks and freckles, holding tight to a golden retriever. Her smile was tentative, uncertain, like someone not used to being photographed or loved. The dog's tongue lolled out in a classic, goofy expression, the kind that spoke of unwavering trust. David's throat tightened. He had never seen either of them before, but the image struck something deep, something hollow. Last came the journal. Its pages, swollen with moisture and time, released a faint scent of mildew and something else beneath it, something like lavender soap and basement dust. The first page crackled as he turned it, brittle yet defiant, still clinging to its story. "If someone finds this, please read everything. I'm sorry. I didn't know what else to do." David read the sentence again and again. The words were written in ballpoint pen, slightly smudged, as though the writer's hand had trembled. It wasn't the apology that haunted him. It was the assumption that no one would ever read it. Scout stood beside him, silent now, ears pulled back, body tense. Not fearful, not aggressive. Watchful, as though confirming what he'd known all along, that this place held something wrong. David looked from the box to the journal, and for the first time since Scout began his strange digging ritual, he felt it too. The gravity of something buried. Not just physically, but in memory, in silence, in complicity. He held the journal tighter, as if doing so could anchor him. Whatever this was, it wasn't just history. It was unfinished. The journal was no longer just an object. It was a voice clawing its way out of the earth, years too late. Page after page, David turned them with the unsteady reverence of someone touching something sacred and profane at once. The handwriting wavered at points, letters leaning into one another as if for protection. Lily Hammond had been a quiet child. That much was clear. Quiet not by nature, but by necessity. Her entries were dated sporadically across early 1986, each one a brittle echo of her growing terror. She didn't name names, only him, but the shape of her fear was distinct. The meticulous list of bruises explained in school as falling off the porch, the late-night footsteps, the locks installed inside her own bedroom, on the outside. The promises he made when her mother wasn't home, the ones she knew he'd keep. But most harrowing of all were the lines she wrote about Max, her golden retriever, her shadow, her guardian. "Max knows," she wrote once, scrawled with a desperate underline. "He growls when he hears his truck. He doesn't like the basement. I think he remembers what happened down there." That sentence had made David stop, his pulse pounding against his ribs. It wasn't just fear, it was witness. That dog had been her lifeline, the only soul she trusted. Then came the entry dated April 3rd. "Tonight I'm going to run. I packed Max's leash, the granola bars from the cabinet, and the key. I don't know if we'll make it. If we don't, I want someone to know I tried. David had to set the journal down. His hands were shaking too badly to keep reading. The morning light outside had shifted to a colorless gray, as if the world itself had dimmed in mourning. How could a story like this vanish? How could a child disappear and be forgotten? But it was worse than that. It hadn't been forgotten. It had been buried on purpose. He'd called the sheriff's office, trying to keep his voice even, but something in his tone must have carried, because when 2 deputies arrived, they didn't look surprised. Just weary. When David mentioned the name Lily Hammond, one deputy stiffened. The other muttered something about old business. Records from that year had been archived and locked, unavailable to civilians, even some officers apparently. But the badge David had found was beyond dispute. The tarnished number still legible beneath the dirt. A match. Deputy Howard Traynor, a name not just in the files but in the neighborhood, 2 streets down. The retired man who showed up at the shelter a week ago asking about Scout. The dog who refused to go with him. David pressed his palm to the journal's cover and exhaled through clenched teeth. Scout had known. Somehow, he had known. Not just where to dig, but who to trust. The town of Ashcroft had always prided itself on its quiet. It was the kind of place where news traveled on back porches and over fence lines, where tragedies were whispered about rather than confronted, where the past, if ugly enough, was folded neatly and tucked beneath layers of polite silence. But the day the excavation began behind David Marshall's house, the air shifted, not in noise, but in weight. A heaviness settled over the neighborhood, a knowing, the kind that pressed into people's bones. Forensics worked under a wide canopy, their movements slow and deliberate. David watched from the porch, arms crossed, Scout sitting by his side like a sentinel. No barking, no tail wagging, just silent attention. The earth gave itself up in fragments. Bone, splintered and aged, the rusted ring of a chain collar half swallowed by roots. A child's pink backpack, rotted through but still bearing the faded outline of a unicorn stitched into the fabric. Evidence that time hadn't erased, only hidden. The DNA tests didn't take long. The results were definitive. Lily Hammond had never run away. She hadn't fled. She had been buried. Silenced not just by the man who took her life, but by the system that had once believed his story. Max, her dog, had stayed beside her, until hunger, until cold, until death. They had lain there together, girl and dog, beneath that tree for decades. No marker, no mourning, no justice. Until now. The sheriff's department said little. The arrest was quiet. No lights, no sirens. Just a plain car outside Trainer's house, and two men in uniform with eyes that wouldn't meet the neighbors. The former deputy was led out in handcuffs, his expression unreadable, like someone waking from a long nap. In court, he said nothing, showed nothing. But when Lily's journal was read aloud, each trembling word from that 12-year-old girl's final weeks, the courtroom did not. Even the judge had to clear his throat before continuing. David never sought attention. He didn't speak to reporters, didn't give interviews, but he kept the journal safe, wrapped in cloth and placed in a drawer no one touched. He had something more sacred than headlines now. He had truth. He carved the marker himself. Simple, soft granite, pale and speckled. He dug the hole with the same shovel that had unearthed the box, planted wildflowers that bloomed every spring in white and violet bursts. Lily and Max, never forgotten. And every year, as the petals returned, so did Scout. He would lie in the shade of that tree, beneath the blossoms and wind, his ears still and eyes half closed, not guarding, not waiting, remembering.